Okay, real talk. In 2018, a game came out that made grown adults cry over a video game dad yelling, "Boy!" And somehow that same game also won Game of the Year at basically every single award show that year. Metacritic 94, BAFTA, the Game Awards, all of it. But here's the thing that actually matters. God of War 2018 didn't just win awards. It rewrote the rulebook for what an action game is supposed to be. And the effects of that? You can feel them in almost every big action game that came out after it. So today, we're going to talk about exactly how it did that. Not just, oh, it had good story, but the specific, real decisions that changed the industry. To understand why 2018 was such a big deal, you gotta understand what God of War was before that. The original trilogy, amazing games, genuinely iconic. But the formula was simple. Fixed camera, button mashy, hack and slash, Kratos screams at gods, rips their heads off, sex minigame in the corner. That was the vibe. And it was fun. Nobody's taking that away. But by the time God of War Ascension dropped in 2013, people were tired of it. The franchise felt like it was running on fumes. Same tricks, same camera, same angry man. Even fans who loved the series were going, okay, where does this even go from here? And honestly, the studio felt that too. So when Cory Barlog came back to Santa Monica Studio in 2013, this is the same guy who directed God of War 2, he had a crazy idea. Don't just make a better version of the old God of War. Blow the whole thing up and start over. New mythology, new camera, new Kratos, new everything. And a lot of people inside the studio thought he had lost his mind. Here's where it gets really interesting, because almost every major decision in God of War 2018 was a fight. Let's start with the camera. Barlog wanted to do something that had literally never been done in a 3D AAA game before. A single continuous shot. No cuts, no loading screens, no fades to block. The entire game, from the first second you press start to the end credits, is one unbroken shot. He got the idea from films like Birdman and Rope. He wanted that same feeling of, you are just here, watching this happen in real time. 40% of his team thought this was a waste of time. 40%! That's nearly half the people building the game telling their director, this is a bad idea. And honestly, you can see why. It's an insane amount of extra engineering work. Every door opening, every cutscene transition, every scene change in the whole game had to be built so nothing ever cuts. Barlog spent 18 months just fighting to keep this idea alive. And then there's Atreus, the boy, Kratos' son. When Barlog pitched a kid companion as a core part of the game, the reaction from longtime team members was basically, a kid? We're putting a kid in God of War? Like an escort mission? The old guard, people who had been on God of War since 2003, they were nervous because escort missions with AI companions were famously terrible in games. Remember RE4's Ashley? Remember every escort quest you've ever done in any open world game? Yeah, that fear was real. Barlog actually said there was a point where the director of production came to him and told him he might have to design the game without Atreus entirely because they just couldn't get the kid to feel right. They couldn't make him useful without making him a burden. And then there's the jump button. They removed it. Just gone. And somehow that is what got people most upset online. Not the new mythology, not the camera change. Hashtag not my God of War was literally about the jump button. Barlog made a choice. You can't keep the camera if you keep the jump. So the jump goes. Simple as that. Every single one of these decisions faced massive pushback, and every single one ended up being right. So God of War came out, 94 on Metacritic, sold over 23 million copies, more than every other game in the franchise combined, made over $500 million. Okay, great. But what actually changed for the rest of the industry? The camera changed everything. Before 2018, action games had two modes, basically. Either a pulled-back cinematic camera or a fully player-controlled one. God of War did something different. It put you so close to Kratos that you felt like you were physically behind him. It made combat feel real and weighty in a way that wide-angle action games couldn't. You saw every axe hit land. You felt the impact. After God of War, you started seeing more and more action games adopt that over-the-shoulder intimacy. The Dead Space remake team literally cited God of War's one-shot camera as an influence on how they rebuilt that game. The companion system changed everything. Atreus wasn't just a story character, he was a combat tool. You called out to him, he shot arrows, he staggered enemies, he created openings. He was genuinely useful. And because he was your son, every fight felt personal. After God of War showed this could work, you started seeing more games lean into meaningful companions in combat. It raised the bar for what a companion AI should actually do. The story raised the bar for what action games could be. Before God of War, the conversation around action games and story was basically, okay, the story's fine, but the gameplay's the real thing. God of War made the story the gameplay. The entire design of the game, the combat, the exploration, the one-shot camera was built to serve the emotional arc of a father and son figuring each other out. Games like Final Fantasy XVI directly cited God of War's world design and story structure as an inspiration. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order borrowed heavily from the combat feel. The blueprint was real. And then there's the no-filler philosophy. God of War had no multiplayer, no live service elements, no battle pass, just a single-player experience, top to bottom, polished to an insane degree. In an era where every AAA game was trying to bolt on online modes and microtransactions, God of War said no to all of it and bet everything on the single-player experience. It sold over 23 million copies. That's a message the entire industry heard loud and clear. Here's what I think is the most underrated part of God of War's impact. It proved you can completely reinvent a beloved franchise without destroying it. That is incredibly rare. Usually when a franchise goes through a massive reinvention, half the fanbase leaves. God of War went from a fixed-camera hack and slash to a slower, more emotional, over-the-shoulder action RPG. And instead of losing people, it gained millions of new fans who had never touched the series before. It showed studios that maturity sells. Not mature like blood and gore. We had that. Mature like emotional depth. A character with actual regrets. A relationship that felt real. Cory Barlog has talked about how becoming a father himself fundamentally shaped the story. He wanted to capture that feeling of desperately wanting to protect your kid while also being completely lost about how to actually talk to them. That real human feeling came through, and people connected with it. And the numbers back this up. The God of War franchise has now crossed $1.4 billion in combined revenue between the 2018 game and Ragnarok. It's PlayStation's most profitable first-party franchise. Amazon is making a live-action series based on it. This isn't just a great game, it's a cultural moment. The reason God of War changed action games forever isn't because it invented something nobody had ever seen. It's because it took a bunch of risky ideas that half the team didn't believe in, pushed them through anyway, and executed them so well that the entire industry had to sit up and pay attention. Cory Barlog literally said he pushed that game out the door thinking, well, I hope it works. And it did. That's the real lesson here. Sometimes the decisions that look craziest in development are the ones that end up mattering most. If this video hit different for you, drop a comment. I want to know, what's a game you think changed its genre forever? Let's talk about it.